In light of the advice Alistair Begg gave to one of his congregation regarding attending a same-sex wedding, you might have to look it up on YouTube, and the fallout that ensued with the Shepherds Conference and public critical outcry against Alistair. How do we approach others when someone sins? How do we remain tender-hearted, not hardened by the deceitfulness of sin, and be willing to repent rather than hurt others who are our brothers?
Thanks. I'd like to answer that in two parts, if I may. First of all, just to deal with the Alistair Begg issue, because I think it's a big issue that's going on in church circles at the moment, and then to answer the question, how do we actually then deal with somebody who is in a sin situation? So, in terms of the Alistair Begg situation, let me start off by saying, I think, and I say that very strongly, I think that I would have given different advice to that grandmother to what Alistair Begg gave. And I say I think because I respect Alistair Begg very, very highly. He's a man of great intelligence and a pastoral heart. I wasn't in the room. I wasn't party to the conversation that he was having with that grandmother. I don't know the details of what she shared with him in terms of her relationship with her grandson, and all of those things play into it. So he was dealing with a whole lot of information that I don't have. So I'm not prepared to stand and say you were wrong in giving that. But I would say my policy would be, in that kind of situation, generally speaking, my policy would be to say, no, don't attend that wedding. So I think that I would be that way. But as I say, I am not going to be that arrogant to say that I know better than him in that situation. Alistair Begg, and the reason I'm saying that is he made the statement in his defense of it, which was very good, even although I wouldn't have come to the same conclusion as him with the information I had. But he made the statement, he said, perhaps I was wearing my grandfather's cap. And I hear that, but I think he was wearing his pastoral cap. So he's answering it from a very pastoral way. And most of the people that I've seen that have been criticizing him, they've been criticizing kind of in theory. So it's easy to sit in your studio and it's easy to sit in your little ivory tower and say this and this and the next thing, when you're not dealing with the person in front of you. You know, you have a policy, but what's most important is the policy more important than the people. There are sometimes the Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So you've got a policy, but there are sometimes when you might say, in this particular instance, I'm going to go down a different route because of the pastoral importance of the person. So I apply the principle, and principles and policies are very important, but I apply that principle maybe differently in one situation to another. So that's what I'd say. I think my advice would have been for that grandmother who's not wanting to lose a relationship with the grandchild. I would have gone down the route of advising her to, in other ways, to have affirmed her relationship with the grandchild, to have perhaps invited the grandchild to sit down with a cup of tea and something, and to have said to the grandchild, I don't want this disagreement between us. And the grandchild knew the disagreement. I don't want that to get in the way of our relationship. I'm not rejecting you. I do reject that behavior. So you divorce the person from the behavior. So I think I would have gone down that route more than the way Alistair Begg went down it. But as I say, I respect him, and I wouldn't like to stand in judgment of him. But in terms then of how do we deal with it and the situation, well, we've got clear biblical ways of which to deal with it. Matthew 18, in terms of church discipline, and we dealt with that in our Bible studies. But Matthew 18, very often people immediately run to the latter verses of Matthew 18, where you're dealing with how you approach this brother, verses 15 and onward. But what is the context? Verses 1 to 10, here are the disciples. Who's going to be the best in the kingdom? Who's going to be have the best positions? And Jesus says, no, he brings a child into the middle of them. And he says, you've got to enter the kingdom like a child. So he's calling for humility. The first thing, when we come to dealing with anybody caught in sin, we've got to come at it with humility. If you looked at the passage in verses 11 to 14, you've got to deal with it in terms of reconciliation. Go and find the lost sheep. If one sheep has gone astray, you leave the others and go and find that one. So there's that desire for the person. Church discipline is not to kick a person out. Church discipline is aimed at restoring and bringing the person back in. Then verses 15 to 20, the sort of procedures, the first, second, third step of Matthew 18, all of those are designed how to do it in an ordered way that first of all is private and is you deal with the thing as privately as possible, just you and the person. If the person doesn't listen, then you and maybe one or two others deal with it. If they still don't listen, then to the church. So you don't just bring the big guns. You come and deal with it as privately as possible and as objectively as possible. That's why you bring witnesses in. Because maybe you've offended me, and I come to you and say, you offended me, and you say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. I call for Richard and various others, and I say, come and they come and they say, no, Peter, you got it wrong. Humility, the first 10 verses, say that actually I need to be re-looking at myself. So I've got to be objective, and I've got to be trying to reconcile. Then in terms of Galatians 6 and verse 1, so you restore the brother who has fallen, you restore them gently. You who are spiritual, restore them gently, but watch out that you yourself are not tempted. So you don't come in self-righteousness. You've done wrong. No, you come saying, this is a problem. I'm a sinner like you. Let me point you to grace. Let me deal with you in terms of grace. So I think that's the way I would do it. And it's that people are important, have a pastoral heart. That's what Alistair Begg had, and I believe that's the way to approach these things. And it'll be different in different circumstances because people are individuals.
It's one that's a bit more personal to you. So, how did you know that you were called to be a pastor?
It was written on a wall.